the city has had ownership of an area that is referred to as Kenwood Park or the Kenwood Park Addition, and that is basically a piece of property that's inside a horseshoe bend of the Smoky Hill River. And the city acquired that in 1917. They platted it as a one lot, one block plat, the Kenwood Park Addition. And then in 1929 there was an agreement entered into with Salina County that allowed the county to establish and maintain a county-owned and operated free fair in the park. That's been occurring annually since that time. At the same time, the city reserved the right to continue to use the use for the area for public park purposes at all times, except when that use would conflict with the use of the property for a fair. And then the other part of that agreement that was significant is it basically said that any buildings built by the county belong to the county, any buildings built by the city belong to the city. That agreement was revised in 1959. It was amended in 1977, and the county authorized construction of the Bicentennial Center. And then in 1988 it was revised again, and there was a plan put forward to build a city recreation center in this area in 1988. That plan was never built. Then here in 2009, the Kenwood Park lease agreement expired, and a new short-term lease was negotiated with the county. We kind of summarized that the Ag Hall, the rodeo grounds, the 4-H building are county facilities. The existing municipal swimming pool that was built in 1956 and the Buy Center are city-owned facilities. If you look around the city, the vast majority of our park areas are zoned R1 single family, and that's just an indication that they're viewed as an extension of the surrounding residential neighborhoods. They're there to serve residents in those areas, and most of the parks that we have are passive parks, meaning they have picnic shelters, play areas, not a lot of intense activity. Oakdale, Sunset, Jerry Ivy, and all the small neighborhood parks would fit into that category. The only exception being the East Crawford Recreation Area, which is zoned agricultural. So Kenwood Park historically was zoned R1, and then in 1978, while the Buy Center was under construction, the City Commission agreed to authorize the sale of cereal malt beverages and other alcoholic beverages at the Bicentennial Center. In order to get the proper licensing, they needed to be in a district that allowed for drinking establishments and drinking establishment licenses. The R1 district doesn't allow that, so the Planning Commission initiated the rezoning of the Bicentennial Center and Fairground site to C3, which does permit drinking establishments. And basically, I think John has the map there. The shaded area there was the basis for that map was trying to cover all the buildings and areas that might have the sale of beer and consumption of alcoholic beverages. This area in the lower left-hand corner there was left out of that and remains zoned R1. So now this is coming back to you primarily because we first looked at the intensity of the use, the traffic and activity, and determined that this is a type of use that would be a conditional use in the R1 district. But then in looking at a number of aspects of it, it was really such a unique facility with unique features that it seemed like the planned development district, which allows basically a customized zoning district to be created based on a plan for a piece of property, was the most appropriate mechanism. And so Mr. Snyder, Director of Parks and Recreation, filed this application to change the zoning classification of the property from R1 to Planned Development District, and public hearing was scheduled for this date and time. As we mentioned, the one thing about a Planned Development District is that you can customize that district according to the plan presented. And so the plan presented, there was a number of items that we identified, one of which dealt with setbacks of 2 inner tube storage structures. And John, I guess if you want to go to the site plan, you can identify. Dustin can point those out to you, but we have 2 inner tube structures along the west side, and then the elevated tubes for the water slides. Those 2 items are located closer than 25 feet to the west or Kenwood Park property line. It's not easy to see clearly from the plans because they're reduced to small scale, but the tower platform for the water slides would be 48 feet tall, and that doesn't fit neatly within the R1 classification. The other aspect that deals with this is looking at a shared parking arrangement for the Bi-Center, Aquatic Center, and County Fairgrounds that we'll look into a little more deeply. And then a fourth item, there are existing utilities that serve the Bi-Center, the YMCA, and also an intake line that runs from the Smoky Hill River Channel next to Bill Burke Park and through this parcel to get over to the water plant. All of those items had to be worked around for this particular layout, and we do have some areas where portions of structures would be located over the top of what would be future sanitary sewer and storm sewer easements. But the way that we looked at and analyzed the parking for this is that you basically have an existing municipal pool that doesn't really have any off-street parking. You park on the park roads around the pool, and also some people park in the Bicentennial Center parking lot to the south. If you were to pick this up and move it out to a completely vacant area with an occupant load of 1,980 persons maximum, you'd have to create a parking area of 660 spaces. And a certain percentage of those would have to be handicapped accessible spaces based on the size of the lot. But the way we looked at this, which is the way that the zoning ordinance looks at it, is we looked at it, we compared the expansion of this versus the existing pool that's in Kenwood Park, because really, if you look at it from that standpoint, it's really an expansion of a facility that already exists in Kenwood Park. So that reduces the parking requirement based on what's existing. If you look at the area that's both to the east here and to the north here, particularly if you look at the area east, you have 246 spaces. And then in the area, in this area up here, those are 488 spaces. And so that is the area that we believe that people will utilize to attend this new aquatic center. There's a total of 1,189 total spaces on the campus, and the county really only has 10 spaces under their control, and those are just north of the Ag Hall and the 4-H building. If you were looking at the Bi-Center today, under today's standards, you would need probably in the neighborhood of 2,000 or more off-street spaces based on the size of the arena that exists there. So we looked at this, determined there were 734 parking spaces within close proximity to this facility. And then one of the other things we looked at was, the plan here is for joint or shared use of the facility. So we have a requirement that to look at shared or joint use of parking that serves 2 different uses on 2 different properties. We generally need some assurances that they're going to operate at different or non-conflicting times. And so your best example of that would be a medical office and a church, or we have an example over at the corner of North and Ohio Street. There's a small church that's at the corner there, and they have little or no parking of their own, but just to the west of that is a plant for Great Plains Manufacturing. And so they have an arrangement that says on Wednesday evenings and Sunday mornings, people attending the church can park in the Great Plains parking lot, and there's no activity at the church going on when the employees of Great Plains are using it on weekdays. We can't sit here and say that absolutely the aquatic center will never be in use at the same time as the Buy Center or some horse show or things at the fairgrounds facilities, but there is a 30-year track record of shared use over there, and that has been deemed to be acceptable over that period of time. So what the applicant's requesting is that you accept and approve the current parking arrangement in Kenwood Park as being sufficient for the aquatic center as proposed. Did want to point out that it's difficult to see, but right in this area here, they are proposing construction of new parking area for the handicapped accessible spaces, and that would be near the front gate of the facility here. So I've talked a little bit about parking. John, if you could jump to the features list towards the end of the slide after 23, I'm going to have Dustin kind of walk you through the various features of this facility.
We separated this into buildings and structures and then the other features that the pool will provide. I guess, John, it might be best if we just go to a site plan, then I can point it out, because I've got a list that I can read off of. The lap pool restrooms, there's actually separate restroom facilities for the lap pool. That way, if an event, a swimming event, were taking place during the same time that the pool expected to be open and would be having other people enjoy the park, they could separate, or there'd be a gated system that would separate the lap pool from the rest of the park so that that event could take place without disturbance to the other patrons of the pool. There's a filter building up in this area, I believe, that is designed for the functioning of the pool and the filtering system. There are a concession building with a pergola type structure or shaded structure for the concession area. There's a larger entrance area that will be for offices and lifeguard rooms. There's a large bathhouse over on the southeast end of the facility. The amenities that the park has currently is a large slide tower that will have 4 main slides that will go to a plunge pool, and then another swirl bowl slide that will have its own plunge pool. There's a smaller slide called a family slide that allows multiple people to go down the slide at the same time into a smaller plunge pool. There's a kiddie pool. There is an adult pool area. There is what's called a river slide that simulates kind of a rapids effect, and it's a little faster, bumpier, and then a lazy river that goes around the inner portion of the park. There's also a new addition for a spray grounds on the north side and diving boards with the lap pool. I think those are pretty much all the features that you're going to see, and if you have any questions about more of the details, I think the applicant can provide you with that information.
At the wrought iron fence.
Oh yeah, and there is a wrought iron fence around the perimeter securing the park, and it's difficult to see. You can see it here because it's separated from the sidewalk a little bit, and this checkered hatched out looking area that you see along Kenwood is a 10-foot wide sidewalk that's going to be proposed as well.
outside of the fence.
Anybody have any questions of Dustin about the features on the site plan?
Is that spray park, is that going to be is it going to be one of the neighborhood spray parks that's open without having to enter to the pool?
That's my understanding, is it's going to be outside of the fence and wouldn't require any fees for people
Okay, great.
to use that facility.
Is the fence going to be tall enough?
The fence is 6 feet, so I don't know if they might be able to, some people might be able to squeeze in between, I don't know, but
We don't want to go through that fence thing again.
Oh,
May not be tall enough to keep me out.
the structures that are going to be impacted by the front yard setbacks are kind of caged-in structures for the inner tube storage. There's several of the rides or slides that are going to incorporate inner tube usage, so there's 5 inner tube stations located around the park. So those areas will, a couple of them actually impede the front yard setback, encroach that area. And there are a couple of spots where we have structures that are going to be over utility easements, and so that's another thing to consider for the approval of this. And those areas, if we can go to, well, this might be number 9, John. Slide 9. Hopefully I can show you where those are here. You'd see there's these 2 lines right here. Those are sanitary sewer and storm sewer lines. And this is the concession area, and it's not a building per se, but it's a shaded over structure with pillars, and that'll encroach that easement that's going to be designed to house that utility structure there. And then there's this inner tube structure on the southwest side that also is in the front yard setback, and there's a utility line that goes underneath that. And that also is not really a building. It's to describe it, it's more of an 8-foot fence with covering over the top of it, so it's more of a cage, really. So those are kind of the couple of the exceptions that we're looking at with this PDD application.
So I think the total land area here we're talking about is nearly 6 acres. So it's actually a good, large size area. But of that 6 acres, only about 9,500 square feet are going to be under a roof of some permanent type structure. So you're looking at a lot coverage by buildings of about 4%. So that is very low. As we noted, the front entry is going to be oriented straight east, where there would be a entry gate, the way we interpret it, on the east side, so it'll face towards that parking lot and the 4-H building. As we understand it, this would be the only public entrance into the facility, but we'll let Mr. Snyder expand on that. Dustin's identified the building setback items that we talked about. As a note to the applicant, to Mr. Snyder, the project designer did not, in developing the site plan, did not base that site plan on the survey, the property survey that was done. And there's a couple locations along here where the fence proposed on the site plan strays outside the property line into the right-of-way, and so that will need to be adjusted to conform to the surveyed property line. As we noted, there's 734 parking spaces that are within 600 feet. They're technically off-site. They are within 600 feet of the main entrance to the facility. As far as signage, I think you have a picture of that, John, and you should in your site plan as well. Or do we?
Yeah, we've got one in here.
You should have one in your packets. I don't see one in our slide package here.
19.
Oh, I guess
Slide 19.
It's 19, John. So this sign would be located towards the southeast corner, and it's approximately 58 square feet in height, or excuse me, square feet in total area, about 9 feet tall, 6.5 feet wide, which is larger than you would have in a standard residential setting, but this is not really a residential setting. To the best of our knowledge, no wall signs are being proposed, but they, under even R1 zoning, they could put up to 2 wall signs on the outside wall of the facility there if they wanted to identify something. As far as landscaping, we have on item 10 there, John, is the overall landscape plan. And our determination is that they would need if we applied our width and depth standards to this site, they'd need a little over 16,000 square feet of landscaping and 33 tree units. And they far exceed that minimum requirement. And they've got shade trees, ornamental trees, evergreen trees, large and small shrubs, ornamental grasses, and wildflowers. So it's a very diverse landscape plan, both on the perimeter and inside the park. And the plantings have been reviewed by planning staff and the city forester, and they're all from our recommended tree list and our xeriscaping plant list. As far as parking, just a couple added notes. They have a proposed addendum where they would go in and resurface and restripe the parking area to the east of the site. And then we also wanted to note that you've got the 5 handicapped accessible spaces here, but based on the occupant load and demand for this facility, they're probably going to need to go out here and add some additional handicapped accessible spaces close to the main entrance, and that'll be part of the resurfacing and restriping. We also wanted to note, John, we have the blow up there, which is number 20. And this area right here, they have not provided quite enough width for this driving aisle and backing space here, so they're going to need to adjust that to provide a minimum of 24 feet there. And John, if we could go back to the 4, the overall site, or excuse me, 7, the overall site plan. Just to give you an idea, for you have Kenwood Park Drive, a public street, you have a public drive over here. There's a planned sidewalk system along the outside here. We have a handicapped ramp here and a sidewalk leading people from this parking lot to the gate. This is a vehicle drop-off area here, so you could drop children or others off here to go to enter the gate, and then this is the main area here for entry. And so there's good access and circulation all the way around. You've got a designated drop-off and pickup spot here, close at hand handicap parking here, and then this pedestrian access from the north. So the area as planned is going to be very accessible no matter where you choose to park, or if you don't choose to park at all. So we think from a zoning standpoint, this clearly has enough land area. It's centrally located within the community, but at the same time there's a number of other public facilities and activity centers here, including the YMCA, and the site's more than 1,000 feet from any residential areas, so noise, traffic, spillover effects should be minimal. The pool structure and site should blend in with the surrounding area, and you've seen the fencing and landscape plan. Except for the rare occasional multiple event or shared use situation, the existing parking facilities are more than adequate to serve this location. We've got adequate sized public and sewer lines in the vicinity, and runoff will go directly to the old river channel. There's public and private street access on all sides, and this would be consistent with the comprehensive plan, which shows parks and recreation uses in the Oakdale Kenwood Park area. We've also summarized the shared vision and statement and strategic plan from the City Commission, which their vision of the Kenwood Park area is to have a destination area that has recreation, tourism, entertainment, hotel, lodging, and surrounding mixed-use development with a linkage to the downtown area. So we've attempted to identify the areas which are customized and don't fit neatly within any zoning district, and that would be setbacks, that would be the shared parking arrangement, that would be the structure height for the stair tower, and also the areas there that would be built over a future relocated utility lines. So we think that the plan is compatible as far as the design, the layout, the scale, and the character with the other uses in the Kenwood Park area as well as the YMCA, and we would recommend approval of a creation of a planned development district for this property, including the 4 variations as to setback, height, total off-street parking, and placement of structures. In your action approving this, you would be approving the site layout, site development as proposed here, as well as the landscape plan and the location of the drop-off area, and then the sign right in this location. So that would be incorporated, and so the expectation is that what you see is what you get as far as the plan that's presented to you today. With that, I'd be open to any questions, or certainly you may have some questions for Mr. Snyder about the facility.
The city bus goes by there?
I cannot speak to that off the top of my head as far as the route. Mr. Snyder may be familiar with this. I believe Oakdale is a street that's on the route there, but bus stops.
I'm sure it could be modified anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. For the kids to go.
Yes, Commissioners, there's several bus
your
stops.
Name and address?
I'm Steve Snyder.
Okay.
Live at 655 Guernsey, Director of Parks and Recreation. There's a bus stop at the on the YMCA Drive. There's one that is actually pulls into the front entrance, the north entrance at the Bicentennial Center. It shows on the map of outside there, but I think it actually pulls into the drive at this point. So it's in the vicinity. And then there's
here, Steve.
no, I think it's right on the would be on the north side, right at the main entrance on the north side of the Bicentennial. It shows it's out on the drive, but I think the bus does pull in.
The
So
location
it's right there. And then there's one in Oakdale Park, right at the corner, right at the north side of the formal garden area on Oakdale Drive, to the left, Ian, a little bit to the west. Right, yeah, right in that area, a little to the west of that. So, and like I said, I know that the plan with the bus stops is to reevaluate all those stops after a year or two to see if they need to adjust them. And this very well may be an area that we'd want to request an adjustment to handle that.
Especially during the season that it's open.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, we do have Mr. Snyder there, and we also have Dean. Any questions of either one? Well, why don't you just stay there for a minute, Mr. Snyder? Any questions?
Have there been any opportunities for public art explored here?
Yes. In the bid packet, we have several allowances for equipment, for inspections, contingencies. One of those allowances does allow for public art. Right now, there's 2 different areas that we're looking at for the public art. I don't know if Dustin talked about the wave pool and the zero depth pool, but on the back wall of the wave pool, the zero depth, the narrow area, a little bit to the left of that, there's a wall there. It's got a waterfall. The Arts and Humanities Department's looking at tile and mosaic behind that waterfall. Also on the front of the administration building, there's a placeholder that has been designed in the building. They're also looking at the mosaic and tile in that particular area as well. So we have, that will be, it's not part of the base bid, but is included in the allowances. So when they have their artist finalized in the actual design, that will be incorporated in the buildings or in the wave pool itself.
Is that public art contingent upon a certain bid level so you don't go over budget? Or is that going to be included?
Just the wave. It's included in the allowance. We have about $600,000 built into the base bid of the three different areas of allowances, one for equipment, testing, contingency, that totals 600,000. Art is in that area. So that was built, each bidder had to include that dollar amount in their base bid. So that's guaranteed in there, and it can be spent basically however the city or we deem necessary, whether it's equipment. That includes the tubes that we need to have for the tube storage, lifeguard, some of the lifeguard chairs, the handicap accessible lifts, office equipment, computer equipment, concession equipment. Those are all built into that allowance, as well as the art.
Okay, thank you.
You know what the water usage is?
The water, the use? The square foot of water surface area is about 26,000, about 26.5. That is about double the square foot area of the current pool, which is about 13.2 of our municipal pool. The volume of water is about the same, about little over 500,000 gallons. And the reason for that is that most of the water, the majority of the water is not deep water. It's a shallower water. All the area that is in the wave pool, zero depth, the plunge areas is shallow water. The deep water is primarily in the diving well and one end of the lap pool. So the water use should be, as far as total volume of water to fill the pool, will vary very little from what we have today. Square footage of surface water is larger. So, and with the new pool, obviously I may say we're ensured that we will not have the leaking problems that we have with our current pool. So.
But we'll lose more because of more surface area, but nothing like what we're losing now.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
the more surface water,
Yeah.
the more evaporation potential.
Now, you mentioned something about rerouting the lines. We discussed that last week. What have we found out on that? How extensive is that going to be? Extensive/expensive?
I think, John, if you go to the site utility plan, which is number 9. Or actually, why don't you go to number 6, John? There are some lines there, I think. This line, and there's an existing line here. Those are areas of existing lines that will have to be either abandoned and capped over and rerouted to get around the perimeter of this. And then there's a water intake line that comes through here, and that goes all the way out to Bill Burke Park and carries water to the water treatment plant. But it was a matter of getting those all identified and their locations, and that has been done. And so there's several of those that will have to be rerouted more to the outside to make sure they're on the perimeter outside this particular facility. But
Yeah.
all that work has been done, and then there will be one thing that wasn't done earlier is that the follow-up will be to designate and dedicate easements for those lines so that they appear more readily on maps and records so that people know where they are for the future.
Okay. Well, I think given, the location supersede, I think it's much better than, I think it's a good location. It's probably worth rerouting them. Any idea what we're talking about? Is it going to hold us up quite a bit on this, or? I know you're kind of shooting for about a year from now, or?
Our goal is to have this project completed May 7th, 2010. The relocation of all the lines, and I can expand on what Dean was talking about. The upper line that crosses right through the middle, or almost the middle of the football field, and the track is I think it's a 12-inch well line service. There's a well house over across in the county side. Because this one right here, all those are included in the base bid to have those relocated.
Oh, they already were. Okay. So we're not worried about any additional
That
cost.
obviously will have to be one of the first things of the project.
Sure.
Some of the site work, those relocation of these lines.
Any future plans over here? I notice you've got quite a bit of green space, and I know it's kind of a raised area. Was that purposeful? Was there maybe some future plans down the road, or does the city just kind of want to leave some green space there, or?
Well, I think there's a couple things. At one point, we had considered putting a sign on this elevated area right here, and right now we've moved it, as Dean mentioned, down into this drop-off area, the sign that you saw. This area does provide the opportunity for expansion. If you recall that last July there was a survey that we had for the citizens, and there was a number of items that people could prioritize that they'd like to see or not want to see. There were several things that didn't rank very high, that a flow rider, for example, almost like a surf in place. We thought it might rank higher than that. It did not, though. It's not included in there. But let's say that down the road, something like that feature or some new feature that comes out on the market that's real popular, that at that time the City Commission says, let's add that. That would obviously provide that opportunity in this open area. Other than that, this will be a kind of an open green space. We're looking at Bermuda grass, a warm season in this whole area. Is similar. And then we talked about the landscape, and I'll just go ahead and mention that the idea for this particular area and the extensive landscape was to make that a park-like setting as much as possible, rather than the expansive concrete that you saw in the 1950 pools like we have today over Kenwood.
How did the bids come out on this? Were they below the architect's estimate?
They were, and you know, we've advertised, or at least stated, this was a $12.5 million project, and about 900, let's just call it $1 million, was in for the planning, design, construction documents, administration. So that left us about 11.5 for construction. We did add 2 alternates to the project, as well as some modifications to the plan that were included in the base bid. The alternates include the spray ground and mill and overlay of this parking lot. And I can tell you that the low bid at this point, including the 2 alternates, was $10,700,000, including the alternates. And I'm pretty sure we're going to recommend that we take this as alternate number 2 to fix this parking lot and restripe it, as Dean was talking about the need to do that. We're still considering whether we want to include this in the bid and as an alternate, or whether we want to contract that out separately as a standalone project. A little concerned on the price compared to what we've built. The spray ground is pretty much identical in size and function and appearance to the 3 we have today, the one at Jerry Ivy and Centennial and Hawthorne. We built those. Now, some of them were 5 years ago. Last one was, and one was in 2000, or 2 of them were in 2002, so they're 7 years old. They were in the $100,000 range, and the Ivy was about $87,000. This is at $300,000, so we're a little concerned about that. So we haven't really made the final recommendation. But even at that, even if it is included, it's 10.7 million. So.
As a taxpayer, I was going to say, as a taxpayer, I appreciate your attention to noticing that, not just being so laissez-faire with our other 200,000. So, yeah.
But it's still planned to keep it in the final outcome, though, right?
Well, yes, I think what we would do if we did not include it in this particular project, we would look at going out as a separate project and bid, and adding that along as a separate contract. Dustin touched on it a little bit. The reason this sets over here. Right now, our existing spray grounds, we open up the 1st of May, and we keep them open until about the 1st of October, depending on weather. Everything's weather-related, and obviously they run throughout the year. This facility is anticipated to operate similar to the time frame we have today, around Memorial Day, maybe a little earlier, depending on demand, but generally will shut down in mid to late August when the schools start back up. You lose interest from people, and you also lose staff levels when they go back to high school and or college. The good thing about the spray grounds, they don't require the staffing levels, and you can open those up because you still have a lot of hot weather in September. And this would be in the good issue if we have this, is that could be separated. This fence comes across here. It also goes around here, so you could isolate that and have that as a free facility prior to the opening of the other parts of the facility, and you could also have an extended season in the fall. So we see some value of that, having that in the center part of the town. as we have the spray grounds in north, west, and south right now.
And those are very popular.
They are very popular.
Yeah, I definitely think it's one, in addition, we want to keep for sure.
My granddaughter braved the one at Hawthorne this weekend, so.
Yeah. And you did say that that would be open and free at the same time that the pool is open.
Well, what we initially had proposed is that would be free and available prior to the opening of the facility, and again after the main facility closed down, that it would be incorporated as part of the paid facility during that time. And Dustin mentioned it as free. We've debated whether that would be the free facility at all times. If you're familiar with our current operation, the so-called baby pool, the kiddie pool at the Kenwood, is open and free at all times. You just cannot get into the large pool at that point. One of the issues that we face is that if you have this in this area, the restroom that we pointed out is inside the fenced area, so we would have to address that issue right then.
But you don't have restroom facilities at some of the other spray parks.
We have,
real close.
Yeah.
I mean,
Of course, Ivy does.
Yes.
Yeah.
Centennial has one, across the parking lot. Hawthorne does not have any
Yeah.
nearby, so, yeah.
I would think it would be really nice to have a free,
Yeah.
even when the pool is open, but that's,
Agreed.
Yeah.
I would agree.
What is the cost to get in? Do you know?
It hasn't been finalized, but we're looking at about a two-tiered structure of $3 to $5, $5 being the adults, $3 for children.
You're thinking about a season pass?
We are going to add season passes right now, and we've checked every aquatic facility around the state, similar, everybody, Hayes and McPherson, Derby, Hutchison, Topeka, looking at their fee structure. A lot of them have the season passes. Some have family passes, some do not, and we were looking at more of the individual ones. But basing it, you can generally base them off of 20 swims as a season pass, so you can still keep it fairly reasonable. And that's not the limit, but that's the dollar amount for the yearly pass. So that's what we're looking at in our budget preparation right now that we're submitting. So.
And no alcohol beverages there?
Adult pool, I thought it'd be nice to have a float-up bar, you know. I might actually go use the public pool then.
is there an age limit for children?
Right now, it's we classify anybody it's in elementary to high school as one fee.
But do you have to be accompanied by an adult? I was shocked at McPherson when I dropped my grandkids off, and they couldn't go unless they were accompanied by somebody that was, I think, 16 or older.
And what age?
They were like second grade, and
Okay, right now we currently have that regulation if they're preschool, under kindergarten, under 5,
sure.
But not if they were 5
Okay.
or kindergarten through high school. They could be dropped off.
Okay.
And we know that right now it is a drop-off situation. Obviously, with the
Oh, yeah.
amenities and all the features in the park-like
bet.
setting, we want to make it a family
Yeah.
facility where people come and they want to come back, but they stay longer when they get there. So.
yeah. Okay, I'm glad to hear that. I
Further
mean,
questions?
I just want to say their babysitters were with them, who were like 13, but they weren't old enough
Oh,
to,
take them in.
or 12, something like that.
16?
I wasn't just dropping, I want to make that clear.
See you later. Yeah, thanks, kids. Yeah.
Sure.
I'm going to the liquor store. You kids, I'll be back to pick you up in a couple hours. Yeah.
Any further questions of Mr. Snyder? Or
Well, I just want to say, my initial gut reaction has been all along that this is very expensive, and I think it's too expensive, et cetera. But I tell you, after kind of looking things over, it's very beautiful. I think it's going to be a wonderful addition to the city. And I mean, I think all the greenscape, I think you guys have really thought this through. I appreciate you saving the few $100,000 right off the bat and being conscious of that. But I really do. I think you guys have used it in a good area of town. I think the resurfacing of the sidewalk or the pavement is thinking about, even though it's city property, in a way you're thinking of your neighbor, so to speak, in the Bicentennial Center. And I really think it's a well thought out plan, and look forward to it to coming open. And I may even go swim. I don't even swim. I don't want to see my fat body out there, but I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be nice. Yeah.
Well, I do. I've been to the McPherson Park quite a few times myself, and I enjoy the slide, and I'm looking forward to the 4 slides. I think that's going to be great, and I think, how tall is theirs? Do you know by any chance?
I honestly don't. I don't know what the deck is. Like Dean mentioned, the deck height here is 35 feet for all 5 of the bigger slides. And then the roof structure is
48.
Oh, 48 is the total structure.
that's the top of the roof
structure height,
structure.
yeah.
Deck height's 35.
35.
And that does provide a pretty good ride. And that swirl slide or toilet bowl slide is, if you've ever seen anybody use those or film of it, that's a pretty exciting thrill ride right there. So
Can't wait.
it'll be
Any
fun.
opportunity for private use, renting it out, or you haven't considered that, or?
We have. We've looked at some of the fee structures to what it takes to staff that, and I would. What we've seen so far, that it would probably the only time it would be worthwhile would be a large group. I mean, a company type picnic, a large church type function, not the 10 to 12 people birthday party
right.
that we
Right,
probably
yeah.
couldn't afford it. With staffing levels, because you cannot, unless you isolated just the 25-meter pool, which doesn't provide all the fun features, there's too many other areas that are intertwined, I guess, that you'd have to have staff levels there that might prohibit that for small groups.
About what size staff does this take on an average day? I mean, at any one time, how many staff people?
We're looking at probably about 40 people. Doubling what we have today.
Great employment opportunity.
Not at all times. I mean, obviously.
No, but right now, if we run 12 to, or closer to 20 lifeguards in a day. Now, they're not all on deck at one time because they're rotating through, and there's maybe 6 on the deck at a time, and we have the 3 shifts. That'll probably be closer to 40. Now, that doesn't count some of the assistance type where you cashiers or concession workers, administrative staff that may be involved as well. So,
What hours? During the late.
one of the things that we added to the plan at the last minute, and I won't say the last minute, but it was not really in our initial talk, was lights. And we talked about adding those as an alternate. And we went ahead thinking with the hopefulness of the economy and the bids that we went ahead and added lights to the facility, not just security lights, but operational lights that you could swim at night. Generally, we operate from noon, 1 o'clock till about 8 o'clock today, and that was our initial thought. This at least the first year, with the anticipated numbers that we will have, we'll probably extend that so that where we have, going to 9 or possibly 10 o'clock at night, and then we'll evaluate that on attendance levels. Obviously, and then the mornings you'll have your exercise and your lesson type programs, but open to the public for open swims, probably noon or 1 till at least 8, and with the lights, it gives the option to go to about 10 o'clock. So.
Good report. Any further questions? Now, this is a public hearing. Anyone in the audience wish to speak?
Yeah.
Okay, with
The notification area for this was all public property except for the YMCA, so we didn't have a long list of property owners that received direct notice.
So we'll bring it back to the bench for possible action and further discussion if necessary.
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion that we approve application PDD 09-1 with the 4 variations in regards to setback, height, total off-street parking, and placement of structures over utility easements.
I'd second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 8-0, passed.
That will
Other
go
matters.
that will go as your recommendation to the City Commission. And for other matters, we turn right around, and we do have a scheduled public hearing next Tuesday, the 19th. We've got a rezoning request and a one-lot plat for a piece of property that is on North 5th Street at the east end of Diamond Drive, just north of I-70. It's kind of a wooded tract there, but it is inside the city limits, and an owner that wants to put that to some use. We have the Riffle Edition number 2 on South 9th Street there, south of the existing Riffle Edition and north of Long MacArthur Ford, which is going to be in order for your consideration. And then we got a request, and I think these sort of things will keep developing as the smoking ordinance takes shape, but the request is back when the Planning Commission originally approved a conditional use permit for the Big Nose Kate's on North Santa Fe, there were limitations put on their outdoor balcony area there in terms of no use or activity on the balcony after midnight. And the facility there is open until 1:45 or 2 a.m., so the question was posed to us about the use of that as a smoking area in those hours, and our indication back was, since there was a condition placed on that by the Planning Commission that all use cease at midnight, that request would have to come before you. So that will be a formal request to you to extend the hours of use on the balcony areas there at Big Nose Kate's. And so you'd have several options there that we'll lay out for you, but a couple of those will be public hearing items, and that was a conditional use permit item.
Okay, no other matters? This
I was-
meeting is adjourned.
Oh, Dean, I was going to ask you real quick. It could be after that. Are we going to readdress some of the? We talked about some wind issues.
Yes, we are. I had a conversation today with some folks in Osborne and Smith Center that are dealing with that issue, and the issue is restructuring your ordinance so that you can allow for the technology that allows people to put up turbines basically on a residential lot scale.
Okay.
And so there is the technology that allows people to do that. A lot of communities are having to address that. Our ordinance currently does not allow for that, and we've found a bunch of communities out there that are we're surprised and delighted to find that Salina has a wind energy conversion ordinance already, but I explained to them that it's not current to current technology or the smaller scale technology. So it's a matter of taking our ordinance that we have now and tweaking it so that we can scale it down to the residential lot basis, and then you can decide what the roadmap is for people to be able to put that up on their own properties.
Sure.
Okay, we're adjourned. I'll not-